Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Welcome to our Rettmobil 2013 webinar. We have an action-packed day for you, session for you today. It's really been a very, very busy 3 days at Rettmobil, probably the busiest 3 days we've ever had at Rettmobil. We're very fortunate today, we have a number of special guests. We have a delegation from India joining us, and you'll be meeting them in just a moment. And we have with us two really preeminent folks from the United States, Scott Fitzgerald. We have Scott Craven and AJ Heitman, as well as Chris Fitzgerald from Australia. And you're going to be hearing from those people and meeting them online. So without further ado, let me just bring us through what we're talking about today. This presentation is brought to you by the EMS Safety Foundation, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a description as to what that is. We are participating in a webinar. It's a web seminar. It's real-time interactive web technology. No other hardware is required aside from a computer connected to the internet and a microphone if you choose to speak. We also record these so they can be listened to asynchronously. Welcome, Neil Blackington. We have a very international audience with us today. Here's some basics. The interface does change a little with time. They've just done a recent update. But basically, on your screen you can see a talk button, there's a hand-raising button, and there's a chat box. And very simple interface. And the whiteboard is there for you to write on. Might be a moment for that to refresh on all your screens. Carl, do you have that refreshed? Do you have a white screen? You've got a white screen? Okay, it seems to be refreshed on the computer. So if you have a white screen for the moment, just check out the computer. One of the problems that we've noticed with the internet is that if you're on a wireless connection, sometimes it's slow. It looks to me like that's the case. So I'll just bring that slide back there, and I'll bring it forwards from the T-Mobile card. I might take off the video. Good idea. There we go. We don't need that anyway. It's one of the problems with low bandwidth, and there's a lot of people online. Okay, so what I'd like folks to do is pick up the pen on the side of this screen there and mark on that whiteboard. Hopefully a map will come up like over there in a moment. There we go. I don't know where that one doesn't work, but just mark on that whiteboard so we can see that. Have you got the? Okay. Okay. All right. I'm actually going to mark on the whiteboard where you are because it seems that that slide hasn't come up for you, and we are here in Germany. And I won't spend too much time on this slide because it won't come through on the recording, and I think that's going to be a little bit of a problem for us during the day. But anyway, let's move right along. It's an unusual problem to have run into. Today's webinar is recorded. I can see it up here. It's okay. Again, anything you type in the text box or anything that you write on the screen or anything you say will be recorded. And as I mentioned, this is brought to you not only by the EMS Safety Foundation, but by a group of delegates participating in our delegation here in Germany. So we're extremely fortunate, as I mentioned, to have AJ Heitman on cue. Come sit here, my friend. AJ Heitman and Scott Craven here to speak with us about their experiences here. Both of them have made the trip as their first Rettmobil exercise, and both of them have some perspectives that they wish to share. AJ has a meeting to run to, so we'll be sharing AJ's experience first. So, what is Rettmobil? And just for those who aren't familiar with Rettmobil, it is a European Emergency Rescue Congress, trade show, and also symposium. It has expositions and also some educational elements. It's held in Fulda, Germany, which is very nearby Frankfurt, established in 2001 and has had increasing attendance both by attendees and exhibitors exponentially since it began. And this year, over 460 exhibitors from 19 countries, and probably we looked at maybe more than 200 ambulances. This is the brainchild of Peter Sefren, and really an extraordinary event. So we're also very fortunate. Dewey Ambulance have really supported our involvement with Rettmobil, have encouraged us to come, and have been very supportive in integrating us with the Rettmobil event. So our special thanks to Martin DeLuey and Arne Schauer. This is Martin, and here's Arne Schauer. And as you're going to see later on in the presentation, both Martin and Arne have been responsible for cutting-edge leadership in vehicle design and safety, and as some of us saw here at Rettmobil. And here's Arne Schauer, and I just want to point out one little thing before we move on, because I know that AJ is going to be doing his presentation. This little item just here, you can probably see my little arrow there. That item there, as simple as it looks, I believe is a quantum leap in system safety for emergency vehicles. This was the only vehicle we saw at Rettmobil fitted with an integrated piece of software purpose designed to provide and capture information on vehicle performance, to give you an interface with the lights, just like your iPhone is with your house, interface with the lights, the air conditioning, a fan, or an interface to patient care monitoring. This is the first time we've seen that. And not only that, it's such a simple device. They've sat down with a company and developed the software to run this. That iPad or tablet of any type can be positioned anywhere in the vehicle. And I think if anything embodied a quantum leap in the safety of emergency vehicles and emergency transport that I've seen in 20 years, that simple little square is it. So that's what's going to greet you. We're just one moment. Arne will greet you when you arrive. The slide shifts are a little slow because we're on wireless here. But that's what's going to greet you as you arrive at Rettmobil. A welcoming sign. You're in the hills and the plains of outside of Fulda, a beautiful, gorgeous town. And whilst we were there today, I did notice some of those little surveillance teeny-weeny micro helicopters taking pictures, and I'm sure this picture was taken by such a device. So again, you are here with the EMS Safety Foundation, and we're here to do three things: be involved in supporting innovation, collaboration, and knowledge transfer. And that's the focus of what you're about to embark on. There's the big traffic jam driving into Rettmobil along with the 25,000 other people who came this year. And really the foundation is there, the EMS Safety Foundation is there to fill gaps that we've identified in operational EMS practice, whether it's technical knowledge transfer, interdisciplinary research and development, or evaluation implementation of system safety enhancements, one of which we just looked at just before, and we're definitely not there to make money. And it's really a team of like-minded innovators across the full spectrum of emergency medical transport and a number of other related technical disciplines who share a common mission of enhancing the safety of EMS delivery for all involved. So in a nutshell, it's a not-for-profit, multidisciplinary virtual think tank and testbed for safety, innovation, and knowledge transfer. Really a tool to enhance the safety of delivery of EMS services. And that's our mantra, and that's really what was embodied in our delegation and our mission here to Rettmobil. So R&D, some folks say it's research and development, but Rettmobil, you see, it's a rip-off and duplicate. Everyone's got their cameras out and their phones out, and they're trying to learn as much from everyone else. It's really a very sort of dense and intense area for active replication. The other things that we've been doing in this particular delegation is we've had a bit of a social media approach. We've done roaming video feeds, some Twitter feeding, and live feeds to gems.com and EMS World. Well, a couple of years ago we had a booth, and here we see our EMS Safety Foundation booth, and Yeah, here's Prof. Seferin here, the brainchild of Rettmobil, a wonderful professor of emergency medical services, and a number of our delegates. You can see Carl Bates here, who's doing podcasting, who's sitting opposite me. And it was a great opportunity to share our ideas and to interview people, but we really became a roving organization, finding it much more beneficial to be out there. Once you have the booth, you really can't get out and about. And so this is us last year, and here we are this year at the Deluy booth. And here you can see we have Scott Craven here, AJ Heitman, who's sitting by my side there and sitting by my side here. And we had a very makeshift booth that would work for our needs. So when we needed it, it was there, and we could just take it down when we didn't. We were very grateful to both Furno International and to Deluy for sharing their space with us and making this all possible. So we also had some fancy communications. I'm pleased to say that some of the folks, I think, felt like that they were wearing one of those little clamps that they put on you when you're not in jail. But we did have walkie-talkie wristwatches and all sorts of devices so that everyone's time could be used optimally. And this was our most high-tech experience. We also not only had high-tech equipment, we had high-tech people. And one of the folks you're going to be hearing from shortly is Chris Fitzgerald, who's on the advisory board and technical expert panel for the EMS Safety Foundation and our Director of Human Factors and Ergonomics, probably the world's lead EMS ergonomist. And we're extremely fortunate to have him with us here. What screen? Yeah. Okay. We're also extremely fortunate to have very sophisticated photography. We had Michael Silver, who you can see here, who we bring out from Australia, and you can see he's wearing his ETAG t-shirt. And we also had Carl Bates, who will be coming up in just a moment, who was coordinating video capture and video and multimedia management. So huge thanks. Without the involvement of those two individuals, the ability to share knowledge is really nowhere near as what it can be. And I think that as you will see over the next few months, as the material comes disseminated throughout the world, the work of these two individuals makes everyone have a broader experience really across the planet. Without further ado, because he has a meeting to run to, I would like to introduce AJ Heitman. AJ Heitman I have known for some time as a stalwart supporter of promoting EMS in every possible way and a strong and staunch supporter of safety. It is a great privilege to have both AJ and Scott Craven join us. And without further ado, I am going to pass the microphone over to AJ Heitman.
Thank you, Nadine. I'm pleased to be here with all of you. And as she said, we've had advanced communications, and I lost my SIM card on my phone today, and I felt like I was on a desert island, so I had to go to a phone store and restore that. But you know, some of the observations that I had as a newbie to Rettmobil is that really, if you come here and if you do something after you leave here, we can save some lives. And I think that with the number of paramedics and EMTs that get killed in ambulance accidents in the States every week, that we really have to pay attention to it. And certainly through JAMS and through Scott's Magazine and EMS World, if we take the lead on this, I think that we could make an impact. When you come to Rettmobil, you find that you have not only innovations, but you have some things that are earth-shattering. I saw a lot of things that were really new that I haven't seen or thought about before. The slide that you see in front of you shows that they've even figured out a way to use up the space that's behind that infamous attendant seat where we never seem to be able to put anything. And so when smaller is becoming better, particularly in Europe and probably in the United States, we're going to be in good shape if we can follow some of the trends. We'll move to another slide here. I think the significant thing about the vehicles that we all saw here is that they are totally maximized. This happens to be my particular vehicle that I want to take and bring back to the States. It's a German armored ambulance tank, And I figure with active shooter incidents and other things that it's on. This is just one little example of how the military's found a way to put some patients inside and be able to take an explosion. So I think that one of the things we saw here at Rettmobil was a much more stringent look at how we bring resources in after a disaster. We also, as the slide shows on here with the orange and white interior, see that people are maximizing, absolutely maximizing the ability to be able to have the space be used, and slowing it down, so we're going to be in good shape. It really is, what you're seeing is compartmentalized ambulances where the main equipment really is in your kits, and then some of the ancillary equipment can be mounted almost anywhere on the wall to maximize space. So that's really the message that I got here at Rettmobil, maximization of space. As you see from the next slide, you can actually, in some of the vehicles, twist a knob and pull something out almost like it would be a soda machine, and have a couple of catheters or whatever it would happen to be, IV starter sets. So there's really no wasted space. You really do feel like you're working in a mobile intensive care unit. One of the most interesting things that I came across, and I wrote about this morning for GEMS, was that I looked at an ambulance and I thought, gee, that looks like a CAT scanner inside. And when I went up, I found out that it really was a CAT scanner. And when I looked at that particular vehicle and then talked to the physician who developed it, what I began to realize is that in some rural parts of Germany, they found that they couldn't get patients back to the hospital in 2 hours, and those patients were dying from strokes. And so they came up with this concept. They've done some research on it. Two of the examples that I posted this morning were both a 66 and a 63-year-old woman. Both of them were met on the scene by this crew from this vehicle. And I want to be careful to point out that it's not really a stroke ambulance. It's a stroke unit that's carried in an ambulance, because ambulance is just a transfer mechanism. They get to the scene, they run the CAT scan, they have a blood analyzer sitting right next to it, and from that blood analyzer they run 10 quick tests, and they can do the actual injection of TPA and other drugs right there at the scene. And so their door to treatment time, instead of 2 hours, on these two patients were 34 minutes and 35 minutes respectively. So that's a tremendous advancement. And as I wrote in the article this morning, as I said to the doctor, well, this is pretty expensive to put in an ambulance. His comment was, it's pretty expensive to have a helicopter fly out after trauma patients too. Why is the stroke patient any different than a trauma patient? And we know for a fact that we can save the stroke patient. We don't always know that we can save the trauma patient. So if we're going to spend $2 million on a helicopter, or maybe $1 million on a stroke unit, relatively speaking, if you approve one, why wouldn't you approve the other? So I don't think it would work for everybody, but I think that's a nice way to be able to travel. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, AJ. I think it's really interesting. One of the comments we received was that that would be very useful for some pretty heavy traffic like we see on the West Coast. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next auspicious speaker, and that's Scott Craven. And I think we're extremely fortunate in the space of one session to have an opportunity to hear from both AJ and Scott. I want to let you know, AJ and Scott have just spent 3 days walking miles. We were going to stick pedometers on them just to see how far they walk. The physical size of this EMS show, it's probably, if you look at straight EMS shows, it's probably one of the biggest straight EMS shows in the world. There are many tents, and they added extra tents this year. So without further ado, I would like to hand the mic over to Scott. Okay, you've got to click the little talk button on the screen. Okay, Scott, you should be good now. If you've clicked that talk button and your microphone is switched on, Carl, just check his microphone is switched on. You good? Just come over here, Scott. Come over here. So, can you just turn the sound off? He's obviously got sound coming out of there on his computer. So I'm going to hand you over to... Turn this talk button off, please.
What's that?
No. Tech One's talk is open. Yours is...
Oh, tech.
You. Okay, Scott.
All right, you got me now? Can you hear me now? All right. Okay, thanks for that introduction. Was that suspicious or auspicious? Auspicious. Okay, that's... yes. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And it was an enjoyable trip. And sorry you had to see that picture of AJ and I on the opening page. That was after 9 hours in airports and airplanes. But we made it fine, and it's been an enjoyable stay ever since. As AJ said, we saw a lot of new stuff, and or stuff that we don't often see in the States. There was a lot of it in ambulance design, and that's where it's probably most dramatic. In this picture, you see the how much the colors stand out, but also that not only are they ahead of us and possibly ahead of us in treating bariatric patients, but also, as you can see, a bariatric provider is taken into account. This was quite large. All right. Next. Okay. Oh yes, this was important too, because they're very efficient there. They concentrate on time saving. So in this instance, they didn't even open up the baked potato. They just put the sour cream and chives down and then put the potato on after. All right, now for something a little more serious. I found this one interesting. I think certainly the CT scanner that AJ showed was something that caught all of our eyes as we walked around. But this was something a little more subtle, and that is an accordion door on one of their Sprinter vans. And as you can see, that's just starting to open, and then the next slide you'll see is it opens a little more, and you can see the bags and the storage that are also part of that. So as AJ mentioned, just a very efficient use of space is what kind of stood out. And the next slide, okay, we'll go, okay. The next slide, you see, this actually kind of harkened back to the old Cadillacs. It may not look so much in this image. It's obviously quite sleek, and the roof line is a little higher, but that's the sense I got. And if we go to the next slide, you might see, some of you might be reminded of that. So that is looking into the door, and you see the sunken seat there at the patient's head. So that was a little reminder that sometimes the more we change, the more we stay the same, or maybe styles are coming around. You also notice in this picture, as you saw on AJ's, just the mounting of devices on the wall. That was common and quite handy. In fact, I'm not sure who we'll talk to later on, but just sitting in some of these ambulances and having things so close, at first you might think it would be claustrophobic. But as you started moving around and mimicking some of your moves and treatments and assessment, you realized how convenient everything can be in these, and how it would be nice to not have to get up and hang on the grab rail from the ceiling and move around. It was quite convenient to have it. In fact, as I was standing looking at one of the Sprinter vans, which now can be rather large compared to some of the other vehicles that they have there, there was a UK paramedic behind me, and he mentioned, yeah, Sprinters are great, but they're just so darn big. And it struck me how once you start moving into these and spending some time in, you might feel the same. It's a little suspect to think that you can actually downsize and be comfortable, especially in America where we need space. We need don't get in my personal space. I need room to, elbow room. It's a bit of a dichotomy, but actually you feel like you have more control in a smaller vehicle with everything within reach. This is looking from that sunken seat back, and as Nadine pointed out, the addition of screens and having them up and available and located in easy ways where you can view them is quite handy. So definitely these are on their way in, and I think that's the quick down and dirty, the Reader's Digest version. So thanks for your time. And
what did you think of Rettmobil?
It was good. It's different than the kind of expos that we have, in that our expos fit in one place. But it's neat. Rettmobil is on the side of an old American military Air Force base, and so there's a lot of runways, not so many buildings. And so Rettmobil, that's why you saw in the opening slides that, number one, there was actually space around that wasn't being used for farm or homes, but they put up these tents, and so you're walking outside much more than you would at one of our shows, and so it's fun. It gives you a little more of a picnic feel. And but the homes are encroaching because the land doesn't go vacant long here in Germany.
And how did you find being a participant in the EMS Safety Foundation delegation? The whole experience.
We didn't eat enough. Just kidding. Food wasn't a problem. These Germans like to eat. They like to feed their visitors. And that was quite enjoyable. As interesting as it is to go to the show and visit the booths, probably the most interesting part is just sitting down and talking with the other delegates and getting a sense of their experiences, what they see, what's working in their countries, what's not working, and even just sharing stories as we talked through. As I shared all the political and legislative issues that we have to go through, it was a bit refreshing to hear in other countries you don't have that. If something makes sense, you can go ahead and change it. That's if you have the money, that is, right? So that was quite enjoyable to have the time with the other delegates.
Well, thank you kindly, Scott. As I say, it's been great to have you and AJ with us and to share all the technical and the non-technical aspects of sharing our different worlds. Speaking of different worlds, we have two colleagues with us here from the other side of the world, to both Germany and the United States. We have Dr. Marwa, who's an emergency medicine physician in Kuala Lumpur, and Dr. Sarah Karim, who's not only an emergency physician and a leader in the EMS world, but the recipient and a recipient of the EMS Safety Foundation Lifetime Commitment Award in honour of Bill Leonard, which she received right here at Rettmobil. So without further ado, I actually have fixed your slides and they're in there, one or two. Would you like to come up and share some of your perspectives from Malaysia on what you saw at Rettmobil?
Thank you, Nadine. So, oh, this slide, when we were on the this slide was taken when we were on the way to Rettmobil, and we thought, wow, such a big show that they even hang a ambulance on the air. So it's quite nice. It's good promotion thing. Helmets. This one. Okay. In Malaysia, well, most of our medics, they hate to wear helmets, even when they go into hazardous environment. And what strikes us nice here is that we find various types of helmets, various designs and all. So we tested one of these. And okay, this is stretcher design. We were looking at the stretcher, the designs, and also we were quite interested into looking at the method that you can hold the docking things for your equipment on the stretcher. So we're looking at how these things can be hazardous, can be safe. So we have Nadine here showing, and Chris showing us how these things should be placed in, out. So it was a nice experience. There's another one. The pointers. This one. This is a tip from Mr. Ron, who actually taught us a few things. Not taught us, actually discussed and shared his experience. What we liked a lot about this session is the eye contact between my colleague, Dr. Mawa, and Ron as the patient, so-called. So the eye contact is maintained and it was easy for us to monitor the patient. And the world is small. So while traveling, we saw a delegate from Brunei who actually live in Malaysia at East Malaysia there. So they just introductions. And here they are again. So I forgot their names already. Okay. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Karim. It's been great to have you and your colleague, Dr. Mawa, with us. And I will put in a plug that Dr. Karim and Dr. Mawa were involved in a phenomenal EMS Congress in Penang last September, where 500 people showed up to hear about safety and quality in EMS. And I must admit, I'd be surprised if that many people showed up in the United States to hear on those two topics. So I was delighted that you were able to join us and very grateful for your input into our delegation and also today. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce a veteran EMS Safety Foundation delegate, Dave Turner from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Has been with the EMS Safety Foundation now for nearly five years, and this is his third trip to Rettmobil. Dave always has the most wonderful, insightful perspective on what he sees, and I am delighted to share Dave's perspective on his experience at this Rettmobil.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? We good? Yes? Good? No noise from my mouth. Thanks. I don't know if I can live up to that introduction. So I wanted to sort of get back to basic stuff that we see when we look at the ambulances here at Rettmobil. And the things that are really obvious are the vehicles, the size of the vehicles, and the color of the vehicles. The other thing that stands out to me, at least, when you open up the back of the ambulance, the difference between what we see here at Rettmobil and what we have in the US is the seating positions. In Europe, they have no side-facing bench seat. They are completely eliminated. They have only fixed seats in the forward-facing position or the rear-facing position only. And we have all seen the research, and we all know how dangerous it is to be on a bench seat, to be side-facing, and to be not restrained. And they certainly don't have that problem in Europe. And you can see here that this chair, this attendance chair, is fixed forward-facing, and it is right up against the stretcher, like nearly touching the stretcher. There are some ambulance manufacturers in the U.S. that are now offering these seats that swivel so that you can be forward-facing and you can be restrained. But to be used effectively, you have to have good access to your patient and good access to equipment in the vehicle, or otherwise that attendant is not going to be seated in the forward-facing position and not be restrained. And they've solved that problem in Europe. Obviously the vehicles are smaller so that the seat can be closer to the patient, but they also have box ambulances in Europe. And as you see in this picture, that is a box. That's a Type 3 ambulance. And they don't have that problem here either, because they have now mounted equipment on the right side of the ambulance. As you can see there, that is a picture of the right side wall. And thanks to the work of some members of the foundation here, Ronald and Chris, these things are changing. And this is something that I think is new this year at Rettmobil, that we haven't really seen this in the past. And here's another picture, a really good example of the seat that's close to the patient, that's forward-facing, and the attendant can now reach all the equipment that they need during transport, and they can remain seated and remain belted, have access to their patient, access to all their equipment. And there's another example of that ambulance right there, the seat right up next to the patient, equipment that they're going to need on the right side. I don't remember if there's another slide or not. There's another example. That's a different ambulance. That is also a box, a Type 3 ambulance. And again, forward-facing seat right next to the patient, where you can maintain eye contact, have good contact with your patient, and still reach all the equipment that you might need. Like somebody else said, IV supplies, whatever else you need. Again, another example there of the seat right up next to the patient. So I think this is a huge opportunity for us in the U.S. to start doing this and to start doing it correctly. And it's obvious with everything that we see here at Rettmobil that the Europeans put a lot of thought into the things that they do, and they really solve the problems. And they're very much focused on access and safety. That is all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, David. Before I go ahead, I just want to address a question. There's been, as I love this interface, not only do you listen to people talk, but they're making chatter in the sidebar. And I was quite impressed to see the question here actually posed to Scott Craven as, well, it's all very good, but are we seeing this stuff available in the US? And I think, just read you out Scott's comment, is yes, we are seeing a lot of these design approaches available in the US. We were delighted that there were US manufacturers now coming here, and I think when you look at innovation, collaboration, and knowledge transfer, that's exactly what we're seeing happen. And with this sort of very simple interface of bringing a few people over here, sharing in what can be done, bringing that back and creating, as Scott has just outlined, a drive for more demand in the United States. You know, the challenge that we have is building demand in the United States, whereas other places may have a challenge in creating supply, as Scott did mention to us. There was another question from Al Braslow regarding the rear compartment. Clearly, anyone who understands the details of complexities of automotive safety and occupant protection is aware that the amount of injury data that you need to capture in order to design airbag safety is massive. We do have that data in the automotive industry for front seat passengers. That data does not exist for rear seat passengers. And the technical experts in automotive safety who are independent that we have approached, who are familiar with this technology and who presented also at the National Academy's Transportation Research Board Summit, made it very clear that the use of airbags in the rear compartment is potentially hazardous, if not lethal. We do not have the data to support their use, and without that data, to be implementing airbags in the rear compartment is extremely hazardous. So that's one thing that we do know, don't do that. You know, Al Hakel has raised the question, any design innovation for pediatric and neonatal patients. Those of you in the foundation who are familiar with the neonatal transport project we're working on, which is a global project, and very much interdisciplinary. I would say that given the scope of that project, we're actually in that microcosm way ahead. Otherwise, I think you would say that what you saw at Rettmobil was pretty close to what you would be seeing in the United States. Not many practices driven by technical science or safety data, and pretty much the same sort of things. So where we saw a lot of advancement, as I said at the outset, in general ambulance transport, there's still an enormous gap when it comes to pediatrics. I think that Charlene Cobbs just mentioned that Miller Ambulance and Demers are both ambulance companies in the United States, and I believe AEV now increasingly also are looking to provide ambulances that are OEM vehicles, occupant protection, crash safety designed vehicles, and also, as Chris has taught us, that address the issues pertaining to task analysis. What is it you have to do, and how can you do that effectively and safely? So this is just a shot of the Rettmobil main drag. Those of you who've been to Rettmobil have walked that main drag many a time. It is a huge, huge place. You can actually see Carl Bates positioned there right in the center, filming something, which is, as you'll see, he's been filming a lot. So our next speaker is Ronald Rolfson. Now, Ronald Rolfson's actually been to more Rettmobils than Nadine Levick. He's not only been to many Rettmobils, but he's on the advisory board of the EMS Safety Foundation, and I'm not sure which, all he's done is outstanding, but Ronald has put research into practice. Ronald has taken the leadership role of implementing the science that we see. Ronald's ambulance is actually responsible for some of the leading edge design we're now seeing, because every manufacturer he talks to, he actually teaches and trains them. They build him something that's probably close to what he wants, and he says, no, I want something better, and he goes to another manufacturer. So he's systematically training the industry, and I think it's a very impressive achievement that none of us have been able to achieve, only you. So Ronald, without further ado, I'm going to hand over the microphone to you.
Thank you, Nadine, for that introduction. It's always nice to come to Rettmobil, and this year in my service we are having a project to transport highly contagious patients, and we are have a project of building a purposely built ambulance for that those transports. What I was looking at now is what you can describe as an incubator for adults to save them from the environment or save the environment from the patient. I like the concept. We are going to do some research on it to see if we're going to introduce it in our service. But I do have some questions and some arguments on it. One thing is that, as you can see on this picture, is that there's actually a hole in the bottom to get the belt come through, which means that any fluid inside there can seep out. And if there's one thing you didn't want to seep out, is fluid from a highly contagious patient. The other thing, there's a zipper going all around, both in the bottom and also in the end, and that zipper is neither airtight or fluid proof, which again means that fluid can come out. But the concept of it, like make a small isolation area around the patient, I like. So I think this will go further on. Let's take contact with the producer and see if we can making some cooperation and see if we can improve it. And if that can be done, maybe we have to make one ourselves. I don't know. There we are.
Next slide.
Next one, please. And here you can see the filter system. The only thing you do if you want to, you just change the airflow if you like to isolate the patient or isolate the environment. So it's a very simple, very sturdy construction, battery operated. The other question is, if you have a really contagious patient which is in very bad shape, that patient will probably be intubated on a ventilator, several syringe pump, maybe have thorax tubes, I don't know. So I'm not sure how we can facilitate all that treatment inside up on all the tubes have to come out. I see options, but I also see some problems. But the system, the principle of it is nice, and I really hope that it can work. So that's it. And there you can see it from the site. I talked with this guy last year, and they told me that they can make the bottom sheet fit all the biggest stretcher manufacturers' layout for belts. Excellent. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronald. It was really interesting seeing some things this year that we really hadn't seen much about, and I agree with you. There's always room for improvement, and I think your model of you've got to take a step forwards and then the next step is forwards. And this was a very unusual and innovative design, and I think there's a lot of scope to do some more with that, and it was fascinating to see that. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Chris Fitzgerald. I think I introduced him briefly before, but for those of you who've just arrived, Chris Fitzgerald is probably the world's most preeminent EMS ergonomist and human factors person, expert. He comes from, of all places, Australia, and he's a veteran of numerous Rettmobils and a veteran of presenting EMS ergonomics on the global stage, and probably the only person that is. So we're extremely fortunate to have him hands-on with us day in, day out here, and he's about to run through with you some of his thoughts on this particular Rettmobil. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Dr. Levig. This year was a great year. It was good to see a number of return participants and a whole range of new people. You can't be here, but this is increasingly becoming an international sort of connection, I guess, with the foundation, and that's just fabulous because we all live on one planet. And it was also good to catch up with Ronald Rolfson himself in particular. Ronald and I spent the first day intensively walking around the facility and looking at various changes. And the one thing that struck me, and we did some video footage, and hopefully that'll become available to people at a later date, but one of the things that struck me that you touched on earlier was the impact of Ronald's work in Norway, where with every successive ambulance build he'll include a new raft of changes, and relative to the overall ambulance they're probably minor changes, but he certainly has this continuous cycle of improvement. We constantly refer to that in a sort of safety or quality circle. But Ronald's sort of been able to demonstrate that you can actually do it in practice. And one of the things that I'd noticed that two of the many manufacturers of ambulances at Rettmobil in fact had that residue effect of Ronald's work, and I thought it was an important metaphor, particularly for the Indian delegation here as well. We had a discussion over lunch with Dr. Angel Singh about the Indian situation, and that now that they've been able to embed a baseline for regulation, so you've got a minimum referential point, it gives them great opportunity to then not go below that baseline in terms of their expectation of their manufacturers. And I thought it was relevant to reflect this experience, that hopefully that'll translate to your country, as we've seen it has in Norway, and as we're hoping it will in America. So I can see that that's a great metaphor for hopefully the future for the industry globally. If you can have the next slide, please. And so we spent some time just information sharing and critiquing and looking at the various detail as we went through, and we recorded some video footage. Next slide, please. And also, we have a bit of fun while we're here, and I think it's an important feature. A lot of this is about building relationships, that we can all talk about technical details, and hopefully we really need to publish a range of details. You know, we need to publish information, but this is about meeting people and establishing relationships. And you know, Scott can email me with some query, or maybe it is becoming a global network, and I think the foundation's done a great job of being a facilitator of that network. I think it to the credit to yourself, Dr. Levick. Yeah, and we as I said, we sort of conducted a range of interviews around this vehicle, but I'm conscious of time and I'll keep moving. Yes, and we sort of revisited some old technology. We looked at a sort of mechanical pump for a CPR in terms of devices and various other technologies. And these technologies are important. So the impact on, moving away from ambulance design, moving towards patient handling and physical effort out in the field. I know that one of the most significant technologies has been the stair chair across globally, and the whole notion of stair descents without some sort of effective mechanical device is complex and hazardous for everyone concerned. And the stair chair has proved itself, and this is a device from Furno that also has been expanded to have a motorised version to be able to move upstairs for those occasions when you need to do so. And we actually tested that. So with my Malaysian colleagues, we sort of conducted a quick workshop on the stairs at the Furno stand, and our shortest member was able to very effectively transfer her colleague up and down the steps with a very brief period of training, and it was a good demonstration of that she doesn't need to be tall, she doesn't need to be strong, she just needs to know how to engage that technology. Thanks very much, Dr. Levick. So I think there's been a great Rettmobil 2013. It's funny how every year we have a different profile, we have a different group of people, we have a different feel. But I'm proud with my association with the foundation, and I'm delighted that it seems to be that where the whole globalisation of this industry is imminent. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. You know, Chris, you touched on something very interesting in many ways, but specifically the concept of this is sort of a testbed environment. You can actually demonstrate to leadership that someone of certain size can manage a piece of equipment like this in this way. So not only is it looking at equipment and seeing new ideas, it's sort of testing it to some degree as well, and education. So the testing and education pieces actually all roll up in the understanding of the innovation. And
absolutely. As Ronald and I began to approach some of the manufacturers, they were sort of starting to run away from us because our line of inquiry was quite enthusiastic, and we would ask about their designs and say, have you thought of this? And some would come towards us and some might not. So, yep. Great. So, look, thank you so much, Chris. And it's just fabulous to have you with us, and I might let you know that not only is Chris a stellar ergonomist, he actually plays the fiddle pretty well, and we had a very interesting night with all of us, and Scott and AJ, and Chris jamming with a fiddle, and one of the local pianists. So I thought I'd sort of wrap up today with some of the things that I saw that sort of entertained me or were interesting or that I thought were novel or innovative. And here we're all taking a look at a piece of equipment management. And this is actually one of those little go bags. And it's a go bag that's worn as a backpack. And it's got a few good features to it if you're in an environment that needs to do stuff at the scene. I think we've all had the experience of rummaging in the bag for something. And the way this is set up, the actual central part of the bag, it opens up like those sort of clamshell suitcases, and it has this little band on it that holds it up in the middle, and these are all modular. Granted, it is Velcro, and there are challenges washing that, a bit of high-speed water and appropriate disinfectant. Here's another device that we saw. It's an extrication device. It's great to see these devices that are now coming up that minimize the use of backboard. So this is one of the devices that's coming up.
clearly we're in an arena where the use of a backboard is something that may not be something we're going to proceed with. There's not really compelling evidence that a backboard is helpful, and there is some very compelling evidence, some of which I've been involved in capturing, that a backboard is actually harmful. So this is an extrication device that I thought was interesting to show you, but nothing impressed me more than seeing the software tablet inside the vehicle integrating vehicle performance, access to patient monitoring, a quantum leap. And that's just a close-up of the platform. You can also see my walkie-talkie watch that a number of people wished I didn't have. And this little button, if you hit that, it's going to turn on the fan and the air conditioning, and then you can just change your screen and you'll get up the patient monitor. So whilst I've seen colleagues in the United States trying to design an ambulance around where to put the cardiac monitor, it's sort of irrelevant. The cardiac monitor does not need to be in front of the medic. Ideally, you want it nearby the patient in case you need to actually do something to them. So again, was this sophisticated technology? We're talking about 4 little brackets. I mean, we're not talking about anything high-tech. The software clearly is high-tech, and that's where we saw the difference. This is Dewey Ambulance, who took a world-first innovation, and if ever there was an award for innovation in EMS, I think it should go to Dewey for having done that. The other thing I sort of liked, you know, many years ago I worked with the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and in actual fact it's where I met Michael Silver, our photographer. And we basically had this system that there was just a rolled up pack that you had a pediatric roll-up pack, an adult medical, an adult trauma, and you just picked the pack you want, hung it up on 2 hooks on the top of the aircraft, inside guys, and then rolled it down by your left side with the patient on your right side. So you had access to all your equipment, you never had to lean over the patient, and these were simple clear plastic pockets with a little Velcro flap over the top. You could see what you had, you didn't have to rummage anywhere, and it was all easy access. Now, it was a long time ago when I worked with the Royal Australian Flying Doctor Service. A long, long time ago. It was actually 1990, 89 and 90. So to see this device, it was great. These are actually attachable and reattachable. I think there's probably a lot of design in here that's not even necessary. You could even simplify it further. But these were clear plastic pockets that rolled out. How convenient is that? So it's great to see something from years ago sitting here at the show, and I was just demonstrating that most of the stretchers, and we've seen a number of stretchers, are split stretchers with the shoulder straps coming off over the shoulders rather than over the top of the stretcher. Here I'm trying to show you, you can see them down here, that there are wheels on these particular devices. Also, a number of people commented on my shoes, but we are looking at the wheels here, and you know the goal is not to have to lift and carry. Not all environments is that going to work for you, and there are retroreflective stripes on that particular piece of equipment. This is another one of my favorites. This is a portable blood gas machine that gives you electrolytes. Well, gee, wouldn't that be nice to know? Patient's potassium's through the roof or is bottomed out. Sodium's through the roof or bottomed out, and it's going to give you their blood gases. Again, simple, portable, you can adjust that straight away. Oh, and I just wanted to go back to this vehicle. We saw this right at the start. This was a very clever vehicle, and I think Scott commented, and also AJ, on the use of hidden spaces. And that looks like where the spare tire is, and it actually is where the spare tire is, but it can be something else. And hidden in here is actually the oxygen cylinder. That's not going to fly around and hurt anyone in the head. It's hidden in there. So I was quite pleased to see that sort of clever use of space there. I also want to mention we have a number of colleagues who we met with, and some are actually in the room with us right now. Our photographers are fast, I'll tell you. And this is Angel Singh, who's holding an EMS Congress in October. And I'd like to put in a brief plug for that EMS Congress. It's in mid to late October in New Delhi. And we'll be able to share all that information with you. We will definitely be there. And I'm hoping that we'll be joined by Ronald and Chris and maybe even Scott. And here we have Dr. Sarah and Dr. Moa just, I think, going through the program from last year's Congress there. So it was a real delight. Here we have Professor Friend. We're in the Dewey booth, and Scott Craven and AJ sharing their thoughts on EMS congresses and the challenges of different EMS systems in different parts of the world and the differences between the US and Germany. And we're also fortunate to meet with some of our Japanese colleagues who were at the Furno booth. Japan is the first paramedic association to actually come on board with the EMS Safety Foundation. Well, we did have a bit of time to share our thoughts in a more structured way, and this is the 2020 program, doing an interview with AJ and sharing a refreshing cool drink with Scott. I think I'd been sprinting around in the hot sun, sweating about something. And AJ and Scott definitely spent a lot of time together sharing information and recordings. So we've run out of time. Our webinar comes to a close very shortly. This was one of the little electric vehicles. I thought it was fabulous. It actually fits in the back of that truck. And we saw a lot, and it really was an opportunity to really be deeply involved in innovation, collaboration, and knowledge transfer. It's our mantra. It's what we do. And we're extremely grateful to Dewey, not only for their hospitality and generosity, but also for their extraordinary cutting-edge, innovative vehicle design systems understanding. There's some more of the Dewey vehicles. So I love this quote from Richard Feynman: "For successful technology, reality must take precedence over public relations, for nature cannot be fooled." You know, it's great to see no squad benches on these vehicles, and there were some 200 vehicles that we scrambled through. So I want to leave with you this particular recording as one highlighting innovation, collaboration, and knowledge transfer. And thank you. Any questions? We'll just wrap up. If anyone who's online has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Or someone who's in the room. We have a number of people in the room. I'm just going to flap on the video and just swipe it around the room so you can get a sense of who's here. We're here at the Golden Carp. Sorry, there's a bit of backlit lighting there that's going to make it difficult for us to really see well who's here. But we have a number of colleagues who are joining us from around the world, and here at Rettmobil 2013, sharing in our web seminar. So without further ado, I think what I'd like to do is to here we go, to wrap up our little webinar now, unless there's any burning questions from anyone online. And feel free to type them in. Just going to flip off the video to save bandwidth there. Okay, so I think we're good. This recording will be available for public access online for anyone in the world. Please feel free to access it from emsworld.com or gems.com or the EMS Safety Foundation website, or even objectivesafety.net. So thank you, everybody. This was clearly a major team effort. I very much look forward to next year's Rettmobil and to seeing the dissemination of these innovative practices into everyone's day-to-day EMS involvement. So thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.